What is up? No, seriously, what's up?
Me?
Sure.
Nothing really. Nothing's new. Nothing's exciting.
Okay.
Just the same old man. Same old man.
Yeah, just the same old man.
Kinda though.
So we are going to be recording 2 episodes today. Mm-hmm. This is number 1 of number 2. So, because we're heading over to Tampa for Engage Conference over at Fellowship. So, going to be talking about engaging. Getting engaged?
I don't know. We've done that, so we can talk about it.
We can. So looking forward to spending some time over there with our friends on the west side of Florida.
Yep, and all the kids are coming with us, and I know that the amazing people of Fellowship are sending our family to the zoo.
Yeah, Tampa Zoo.
And we love the zoo, and Tampa Zoo is supposed to be an amazing zoo, and we don't do that kind of stuff very often just because we have a family of 6 and it's a lot of money. And so I'm super excited. We're going to the zoo, and I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun.
The kids are excited too. It's going to be a good week.
Those of you that are connected with us on social media, get ready to see some animals because we're going to be dropping pics. What?
It's just funny. We are. Or they're going to be like, okay, I got to block them for the next week because they're going to be dropping pics.
Yeah. Mental note.
You know what? Just keep scrolling.
Silent them for a week.
Keep scrolling. It's all right. All right, we've got a good episode for you today. We are going to be talking about, can you have friends of the opposite sex?
Can you?
I don't know. We'll find out.
Oh, okay.
All right, but let's do it.
Gather round, everybody. It's time for a family meeting. The Family Meeting is a show that's all about family relationships. We're the Osterkamps. I'm Thomas. This is my wife.
Hello, and welcome to our family.
Lysandra.
Welcome to episode 126 of the Family Meeting Podcast. Thanks for joining us today. We have a great episode for you today. We are going to talk about a marriage question that we've been asked many times. We hear this a lot. And
What question is that?
Here it is. Here's the question. Can I be married and have friends of the opposite sex?
Okay. And that's an important question for us to look at.
Right.
And for you to set up what kind of boundaries in your relationship before we jump into that question.
Okay.
Though, there's a couple of things that we're working on. The first one we announced in our Facebook group. Mm-hmm. So they heard the news first because they're in the know. They're in the Facebook group. If you're not in the group, it's time to jump into the Facebook group and be a part of that conversation. But, Lysandra, you want to let the rest of the world know what our Facebook group already knows.
Yes, the announcement that we made the other day is, I'm pregnant.
No.
Just kidding. No. The announcement that we made is we are writing a book on marriage.
We are.
Co-writing.
Rough draft is almost there.
It's so close. And then we're going to head into the editing stage and refining.
Got a couple people who are going to help us edit the book and give their feedback, make some final changes, and hopefully sometime this year.
Yeah, we would like to have this book out there available for you. Hopefully it'll be a help to many, many people.
We've got the title picked out, ready to go, but we're not going to let that out of the bag just yet.
Okay, still a secret.
Yeah. And then the other thing is we're working to line up some interviews for the podcast to bring in some guests and hear some stories that are going on in their lives and the things that have helped them and things that will be able to help us too. So got a couple of those in the works that sometime very soon we'll be kicking those things off. So
I'm excited. Got some stuff coming up. But what about friends? Are we allowed to have friends of the opposite sex?
Now, as we dig deeper into this discussion, we're going to look into the Word of God. And then we're going to look at what culture says. And lastly, we want to describe some boundaries you can set up in your relationships with friends to protect the most important relationship you have, the relationship with your spouse.
That's right. So the first thing that we have to understand is God's design for the marriage relationship. So we're going to go all the way back to the beginning. We're going to go back to where it all started in Genesis. And we're going to look at chapter 2, verses 20 through 25, okay? So this is kind of a lengthy passage, but let me go ahead and read this to you so that you can see how did the marriage relationship ever begin. Maybe you've never heard this before. Maybe this is foreign to you. Just listen in and you can hear how the first marriage began. The man gave names to all the livestock and to the birds of the heaven, to the beasts of the fields. But for Adam, there was not found a helper fit for him. So the Lord caused a deep sleep to fall upon the man. While he slept, he took one of his ribs and closed up its place with flesh. And the rib that the Lord God had taken from the man, he made into a woman and brought her to the man. Then the man said, "This at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. And the man and his wife were both naked and were not ashamed." So that's Genesis 2:20 through 25. That's the beginning where it all started. This is where we see the husband and wife relationship begin.
And God designed the husband and wife to be the most important relationship in your life. And as you read through this portion of Scripture, you find that God creates Adam and puts him in the garden to take care of it, gives him the responsibility to name all the animals. And of course, the animals are coming by, and Adam's very easily able to see, hey, all these animals have someone. They've got a match. They've got a pair. And he doesn't have one. And God, for the first time, looks down and says, it's not good. Mm-hmm. So he's been creating all this stuff and saying, it's good, it's good, it's good, it's good. He looks at Adam all alone and says, that's not good.
Right. And
that's when he goes on here in Genesis 2 to create a wife for Adam. And, you think about this passage here. We see the great emphasis placed on the importance of the husband and wife relationship. God's design is that nothing and no one comes between a husband and a wife. They are to cleave to one another. And the idea behind that word is they're so closely joined together that they cannot be separated. You hold fast to each other. That's a tight relationship. So tight that no one else can interfere or come between. That includes their father and mother. He talks about, hey, you need to leave your father and mother and cleave to your wife. Mm-hmm. And we talked about this in the past on the podcast. Sometimes those parental relationships can really get in the way of a marriage relationship because we're not willing to put those relationships in a secondary position and have our marriage relationship in a primary position. For some, it's their children.
Right.
And their children become the primary. You get engaged, you're dating, you get engaged, you get married, and it's all about the two of you. And then kids come along, and often the marriage relationship gets set to the side so you can just focus on the kids. And that's not God's intent either.
It's not healthy.
Sometimes it's friends, and even friends of the opposite sex. So God's design is that husband and wife cleave to one another. That is the closest relationship. That's the one you're going to guard, protect, and foster, and nothing should come between you.
Right. Now, don't misunderstand. We're not saying that you shouldn't have friends.
Right.
Rather, we really agree you should have friends. It is important for you to have friends. It's good. You need friends. I need friends. Thomas needs friends.
Well, and I was just talking about this Sunday. We had Friend Day at our church, and talking about the importance and the blessing of friendship and how much joy good friends bring to your life. Mm-hmm. It is vitally important to you. So some of you need to go out today and you need to try to find some friends because you're feeling lonely. You're feeling isolated. You should have friends.
Right. Now, I have women coming to me all the time, Thomas, telling me, I wish my husband would make friends and connections with other guys. I want him to have friends. He doesn't have any friends. I can't get him to get out of the house. He won't get off the couch and go make a friend. He has no desire to like go fishing with somebody, go golfing, watch a game, whatever. He's very content just to be by himself. And what do you say to those guys who are like, dude, I don't need friends. I'm happy.
I mean, I can kind of identify with that.
Why? Because you don't really want friends necessarily.
Well, it's not that I don't want friends, because I do have very good friends.
Yes, you do.
In fact, I'm going to see in a couple days my best friend Ryan. We a few times a week at least, we text each other, we chat on the phone, we're messaging almost every day. So we do have a close friendship. But as far as like actually going and hanging out with guys, I don't need to do that very often. Just because of my life and what's going on, and the relationship that I have with you and the girls is my priority. So if I have extra time, I want to spend it there. But I do have guys that I spend time with on a regular basis. The friendships are important, but it's not something a wife just can't force that. You can't. These aren't your little children that you're pairing up for a little play date. That'll not work.
No, it doesn't. I've tried it too. Yeah, epic fail. And it's wonderful that you want to spend time with us when you have your free time. I love that. But I think one thing to keep in mind if you are a wife is that in general, and there are exceptions to every rule, but in general, men need less time hanging out with friends than women need. Usually a woman needs more connection, more time with her friends than a man does. Exceptions to every rule, we understand that. But that's something to keep in mind, that it's okay if your husband doesn't need as many friendships or as friendship as often as you do. So just keep that in mind. So yes, wives need friends, husbands need friends. We understand that. And it's important for both men and women to need friends and enjoy. We were created to be in relationships with other people and
right.
to live in community. God created that. And like Thomas said, he said that it's not good that man be alone. And we understand that he was talking specifically in that passage about a husband needing a wife relationship, but we also understand that not everyone's going to get married. And it doesn't mean that their life is now to be lived alone and they are second-class citizens. No way. Even those who are not married are meant to live in relationships and community, and that's where friendships are very, very important.
And here's what we find about friendships in the Bible. We're just going to touch on it briefly. It says in Proverbs 27:17, iron sharpens iron, and one sharpens another. So it talks about the fact that, hey, having good friends in your life are there to be a help to you. They're there to sharpen you. They're there to equip you, to help you to grow. And so you mentioned just a second ago, what would you say to those guys out there that aren't really interested in that? Listen, if you want to grow as a man, as a husband, as a father, as a leader, you have to surround yourself with good friends who will do that for you.
It's great advice.
And you notice what I said? I said good friends.
Right.
Friends who will sharpen you, not friends who will steer you in the wrong direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or put you in like an echo chamber where they're just agreeing with everything you say. Nobody's being honest. It's just, it's just more people like you. That's kind of dangerous. You need some people who are gonna sharpen you.
Well, and some friends will sharpen you. Some friends will make you dull. In more than one way. So make sure you're surrounding yourself. So if you're out there, you're a guy out there like me that doesn't need a lot of friendships, you should have some, and you should have some good friends. So if you're not sure where to turn, hey, it's time to start heading to the men's events, the men's Bible studies, and whatever else, and be looking for somebody who also needs friends, because that's how you sharpen each other.
Yeah. I'm hearing some intentionality needs to happen, huh?
Yes, most definitely. And then in Proverbs 17:17, it says this: a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. And one of the things that really deepens a friendship is going through the hard times. Mm-hmm. Knowing that you have somebody who's walking you through those difficult days. And it's one of the things that has really drawn me and Ryan together. And our friendship really is closer than a brotherhood. like he is closer than family to me because we've had a lot of great times together. We've been around the world together. We've been across the country together, and have experienced a lot of fun things. But the most important aspect is we have walked through the fire together. Mm-hmm. We've walked through the valley of the shadow of death together. And so having somebody that you can count on in the darkest of days, that's so valuable. And it's one of the things that really unites me and Ryan together.
That's right. And we want to look at one more aspect of friendship we find in 1 Timothy. We see that the relationship between friends can benefit both parties because mentoring can take place and spiritual growth can take place within these relationships. And do we not all need mentoring? Do we not all need spiritual growth? Of course we do.
Yes.
I don't want to stay the same, okay? I just turned 38.
Woo!
Yeah. And granted, I don't like the number, but I'll tell you this, when I'm 48, I do not want to be the same person I am right now. I want to be closer to Jesus. I want to be a better wife. I want to be a better mom. I want to be a better friend. I want to grow. I do not want to stay the same as I am right now. So I need some friends who can mentor me and grow me. So listen to this. Do not rebuke an older man, but encourage him as you would a father. Younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, younger women as sisters in all purity. In other words, here we're talking about encouraging people to be better, encouraging to do better, just like that verse in Proverbs talks about, iron sharpening iron. So this is the kind of relationships that we can have. We can encourage, we can spur on to what is better and to grow and to be more like Jesus, to be that better father, to be the better brother, to be the better sister and parent, so on and so forth.
So I think we can all agree God is pro-friendship. Mm-hmm. It's good to have friends, and if you don't have friends, you need to find some friends and pursue friendship with positive, godly people. But what about friendships with other people who are the opposite gender? Okay, we already saw that the closest relationship is between a husband and a wife and should not be divided by anyone. But what about that, Lysandra?
Well, I think what we can see from culture today, friendships with the opposite sex are pretty much encouraged and promoted. Like, and I use culture as a pretty broad term, but I'm thinking about like TV shows that I've seen or like groups that I've been a part of that aren't, a secular group. It's not a church group or whatever. And it seems like it's almost promoted or like it can be fun and almost as if to say there's no danger in it. Like anything should go. And if a spouse is against their husband or wife having a relationship with the opposite sex, they become labeled as the tyrant or the monster who's overly controlling and out of line and distrusts everything. So I kind of feel like that's a little bit of what I'm seeing in society and in culture based on like media and so on.
Yeah, and now we're also seeing a lot of sexual perversion in marriages.
Yeah.
Where other people are being brought into the marriage relationship, which is clearly against what God designed. And we've already talked about that. Husband and wife together, those two shall be one flesh is what it says. Mm-hmm. And when these kinds of relationships are pursued and allowed to continue, the result is hurt, pain, and heartache all around. Mm-hmm. And we've counseled several people who've tried this open marriage lifestyle, and it never ends well. Never.
Right.
It always causes problems because we just weren't designed to be in that type of relationship.
Right. And we've seen it where like people will come in, they'll want counseling, and you find out that like they had all these rules and boundaries set up to have this marriage, this open marriage where other people were going to come into their beds and they're, it's okay as long as everybody knows about it and all these. I mean, they really do set up a lot of rules and they think it through. They think it through. But what does it say about what we think? The ends thereof is the way of death, right? I mean, yeah. And that's what happens. It's the death of a relationship. It's the death of security. It's the death of purity. It's the death of that whole situation. And it's a disaster all around. So don't trust our culture, okay? Don't trust TV. Don't trust the movies. rather trust the word of God and the master creator's plan. Okay.
Right.
He created you. He created your husband, your wife. He created the marriage relationship. So who would know how this marriage relationship is supposed to operate? The designer, the creator.
Yeah, definitely.
And so God designed marriage to be a husband and wife, wholly committed and consecrated to each other. That's the most important relationship in our lives and here on earth. We cannot do anything to potentially weaken that relationship. Okay, so we all understand that. Now I'm going to say something that may surprise you.
What's that?
Okay, you ready?
I'm ready.
Tell me if it surprises you, babe. I do think you can have friends of the opposite sex.
What?
Yes, you heard me.
After everything we have said already, you're coming at me with this.
I am. You're a terrible actor. After everything. Okay, I'm going to let that go. Yes, I think that you can have friends of the opposite sex, and so can I. And I dare say that we both do.
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. But it has to be really, really careful, and boundaries must be in place. And we're going to share with you the boundaries that we have.
And I have many friends who are women, and Lysandra has many friends who are men. We love double dating. We love spending time with other couples. And there are a lot of times where we're like, hey, our kids are off at youth group tonight. Do you want to see who we can get together with and go out to supper with? Or we're always looking for opportunities to gather together with other couples and spend time with our friends.
Yep.
We have many group chats with other couples that we share memes, we joke around, we laugh together, we schedule activities together, we share prayer requests and hurts and hardships together.
Mm-hmm. Joys and positive good news. It's all on there.
And it's usually a mashed up of both of our last names at some point. Mm-hmm. So, because we are Osterkamp, so it ends up being usually whatever their name is with camp on the end of it. Mm-hmm. And that's how we remember what chat we're in.
So we can start, let's go ahead and just share one of the names of one of our group chats with our friends. Thomas talked about Ryan, his best friend who lives across the state.
Yeah.
Who, his name is Ryan Livingston. Shout out to Ryan Livingston.
Yes, and his wife Faith that grew up with us. Yep. Maybe we grew up in her home more.
Yeah, we did.
More often than not, we were at her house.
So Thomas is friends with Faith, and I am friends with Ryan.
Yes.
But I don't just send memes and chat with Ryan. We have our group chat that all four of us can see everything. And it is labeled, because he's Ryan Livingston, it's labeled Living Camp. Living Camp.
Yes.
Is the last name. That's our last names mashed together, and that is our group chat. And so anything that we want to talk about, schedule things, joke around, whatever, it all goes on there. Thomas can see everything I write to Ryan. I see everything he writes to Faith, and all of the other combinations of that.
But with those mini friendships, I do not go out with women friends without my wife.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Mm-hmm. I think of our good friends, Brett and Heather. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't just go out to coffee. I wouldn't go out to coffee anyway, but I don't just go out to coffee with Heather.
Right. Even though in that relationship between the four of us, that four friendship, you and Heather have a lot more in common than you and Brett, as far as like personality trait, style of everything. Like, you and Heather match up, and Brett and I are very much the same. And even though, in spite of that, you still don't like go out and hang out with Heather by yourself.
Right. You'll never see Lysandra just hanging out with some dude somewhere if I'm not there. Mm-hmm. And this is a boundary that we feel like you need to have in place in your marriage. If you have a friend of the opposite sex that you've known your whole life, including before you got married, that's not an excuse to hang out with them by yourself. Your wife should be present, even as you hang out with that person, that friend. Yeah,
and I think about, let's talk about you and Faith. So Faith grew up in the same church that Thomas and I did. And you and Faith probably sometimes had more time together than Faith and I did.
We spent a lot of time together as teenagers, for sure.
Right, and then you guys also like carpooled back and forth to college.
Yep.
You guys were in the same time period in life, and I was younger. So You guys hung out a lot.
We did. We hung out a lot.
Yeah. So you and Faith have a friendship that existed before we got married.
Yes.
But you're not going to go out to eat with Faith by yourself.
No, when we go to Sarasota, I'm not like, "Hey Faith, let's go out and just the two of us." We don't do that. Because it's not that I don't trust myself or I don't trust her.
And I trust Faith and I trust Thomas 100%.
But my relationship with Lysandra is my number one top priority. Guard at all costs. Don't even want to crack the door open.
Right.
And I know, like, there are certain things where you may have to have dinners alone with the opposite sex. I know some of you business meetings and all that kind of stuff. And there are messages for work that I will have with women, maybe phone calls or whatever. But we've even put in safeguards on that. Like Lysandra, if I'm going to go somewhere and I have to see somebody, it's always in public, and Lysandra always knows where I'm going to be. She can actually look on her phone and see where I am at all times. And not only that, she has all my passwords, so she can look at all the messages that I've sent, all the texts that I sent. She has free access because number one priority. So for those of you that, because of business, you have these certain things that you have to do, just make sure you have thought about the safeguards there to make sure you're protecting that number one relationship. But of course, here we're talking about friendships, close friends.
But even in the business relationship, I think about having a meeting in an office. You leave the door open, have an office door with a window, do whatever you need to do, have a third party in the room if you can make that happen, to try to prevent any accusations being made or any doubt from your spouse at all. It's totally worth it, because your relationship with your husband or your wife should be your most important priority in life. So yeah, unless it's family, I'm never alone with a man. I will say this, I do go to lunch with my dad.
Which I think is fantastic.
I would totally go out.
And I hope that someday my daughters will desire to go to lunch with me when they're out of the house.
But really, besides that, that's about it. That's about the only guy I hang out with alone is my dad. And Thomas.
Yeah, thank you for including me.
You're welcome. Any other time I spend time with a man, Thomas and I are together. There's always, he's always there. But that boundary needs to be far more reaching than just time spent together and meetups. The boundary needs to go into messaging. And Thomas hit on this just a little bit. There are so many ways to get caught up and, in things that you can send through messaging. So we have to be really, really careful. Messaging can start so simple. It can start with like, okay, you found a friend at work, opposite sex. You both like Marvel movies. Okay, I just pulled that one out because we're going to go to Ant-Man tonight.
Yep, Quantumania.
Marvel movies. Okay.
We're going to find out what Quantumania means tonight.
So you're both into the Marvel movies. You and your spouse go to the movie and see it together. The coworker and their spouse go to see the movie together. And then that night, you start messaging about what you each thought about the movie. That's pretty harmless. Nobody's sexting, okay? But it opens up a relationship, a friendship, because this is not about business. This is not about work. You're going into friend territory, but your husband and wife are not involved in it. It's just you and this coworker. So it starts very harmless with just messaging about the movie and what you thought of it and what you didn't like, what you did like. And then pretty soon it goes into maybe some flirting, some joking, whatever. And the line between joking and flirting is very blurry. Very blurry. So you have to be careful. So the messaging should never even start. We're talking about crossing the line from like business messaging into friendship messaging. And that can lead to, doesn't always, but it can lead to something more.
Well, and here's what happens in this scenario. You have this shared thing that you enjoy.
Interesting.
And you're just chatting about this. And what happens over time, and there's not a set time period. You are now emotionally connected.
Yes.
And then that emotional connection now wants to bring you to a physical connection. And you say, well, man, isn't that pretty severe? Like, you guys are over the top worried about this. My relationship with Lysandra is the most important relationship to me. I want to protect it at all costs. And so if I never want to get somewhere, then I never want to start down that road. And so it's best just to put up the safeguard and not even go down this road that could lead to temptation. And you think about, we've recently heard about some very high profile religious leaders who, emotionally became attached to somebody that they weren't married to. And it didn't always lead to sex, but it sure led to a lot of problems.
That's right. And emotional affairs are very devastating to a relationship, even if they never get to the sexual aspect. And so you've got to be really, really careful. And every couple that we have counseled who have had affairs, they all say the same thing. I never intended it to go this far. I didn't think it would ever lead to this. But when they just sent that first message, that is where it went. And they didn't think it would. So you sitting there texting your coworker about the Marvel movie, you don't think it's going to go there either, but neither did they.
And they all go back to messaging.
Yep.
Every last one goes back to messaging.
And we've got email. We've got Facebook Messenger, Instagram messaging. We've got texting. We've got phone calls. We have so many
Snapchat,
avenues.
and the list goes on for 10
Twitter,
million miles.
Okay. So we have all these different forms of communication that can trip us up and get us into trouble. So you have to have safeguards on all these things. I have zero communication with men unless my husband is on the same thread. Exception, business. Sometimes I will message our executive pastor and discuss like upcoming events and, okay, what do we have to do? But there again, Thomas has all those, all of my passwords to get into all of my texting and all of my messaging, and he can look at that. But
yeah, messages for the ministry network leader, network that we're involved in, like you send messages back and forth for that.
Right.
Like when it comes to business, there's just some things you cannot avoid.
Exactly. Now, I will not allow any of those messagings to pass from business into friendship unless I add Thomas onto the thread. So if any of these people that I'm messaging, it sounds like I'm messaging hundreds of guys, but like I literally messaged a pastor yesterday and asked him if he would write a couple of blogs for me for this blog I manage. So, I mean, that happened yesterday. But if this pastor would have messaged me back and been like, sure, I'd be happy to write a blog. Hey, I saw on your Facebook post that you went to so-and-so and so where. How was it? It looked like really fun. Do you like going to whatever? Okay, then I'm going to add Thomas into the chat and I'm going to answer his questions. But now Thomas is in the chat because it moved over from business to personal. So we've got to have these safeguards in place. And that's why we mentioned earlier, we have many threads that we're both on there, and the other husband and wife couple is on there as well. Everyone can see the messages. Everything's on the up and up. Nobody has to be worried about anything funky going on. Okay, everybody know what's going on, and trust can remain intact.
And we're reminded in the Word of God to abstain from all appearance of evil. If I have a bunch of secretive messages between me and another woman, that's an appearance of evil. And most likely will lead to evil in the end. I don't ever even want the thought to come across Lysandra's mind that I may be unfaithful to her in one way, shape, or form. Like, I want her to be able to safely and solely trust in me and not even have to worry about it at all. We're also instructed to flee fornication. And that word fornication is a Bible word that basically means like all forms of sexual impurity. In other words, run away from anything that could lead to inappropriate sexual relationships. Even though it may seem like messaging casually some lady that you know at church is harmless, it is quite dangerous and should be avoided. And I think about what it says in Ephesians 5. beginning in verse 1, it says, "Therefore be imitators of God as beloved children, and walk in love as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us, a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God." Notice this, "but sexual immorality and all impurity or covetousness must not even be named among you, as is proper among saints. Let there be no filthiness, nor foolish talking, nor crude joking, which are out of place, but instead let there be thanksgiving." So we want to prioritize our marriage relationship in such a way that they never even would think to question our faithfulness.
Right. Absolutely. So ultimately, based on the principles of God's word and our own relationship with the Holy Spirit, Thomas and I feel like it is okay to have friendships with people of the opposite sex, as long as firm boundaries are in place. And these boundaries need to be set by each other, talking together, discussing it. Everyone has to feel comfortable. If your spouse doesn't feel comfortable double dating a couple because they feel like, their spouse is attracted to the other couple's, person of the opposite sex, then you shouldn't hang out with that couple and double date them. Just don't do it. It's not worth it. Don't do it. You need to make sure that both parties are very comfortable with the boundaries that are set, and always err on the side of safety. Always err on being too particular and too careful. It's much better.
So we want to encourage you to have a family meeting tonight, and just first of all, just start by talking about your friendships. Like, who are your really close friends? What do those friendships look like? And maybe you need to have the discussion like, hey, I desire friendships. Let's see what friendships we can find out, dig up. But specifically, take some time to talk about your friendships with the opposite sex. What do those friendships look like? What are the boundaries you as a couple want to set up to protect each other and protect your relationship, which is primary and most important? Share if you feel like a boundary has already been broken. And I feel like, man, we've kind of overstepped this boundary a little bit. We need to kind of push back. We need to put a couple of safeguards in place to protect our own marriage or relationship. But just spend some time tonight talking about those friendships and what those safeguards ought to look like.
Mm-hmm. And thank you for joining us today. Please go and subscribe to the Family Meeting Podcast from your favorite podcast provider. And if you found this information to be helpful, please share this episode on social media and invite your friends and family to listen in with you.
To find more content and information Lysandra and I provide, you can go to our website, familymeeting.org, or email us at info@familymeeting.org. If you'd like to shoot us a text or leave us a voice message, you can do so at 904-257-3062.
And we want to invite you to join us for our next family meeting as we talk about submission.
So we're going to talk about like jujitsu, mixed martial arts, all those, like tapping out.
No, we are not.
Oh, that's not going to be as fun.
Yes. Actually, this topic will not be nearly as fun as that. And I don't even really care about fighting. Okay. Submission is almost a bad word in our culture. Like, nobody wants to say submission. Well, maybe the men do.
I think maybe in post-editing, I can like add a beep every time you do submission. So it sounds like a curse word.
Sounds like I said something bad. Really bad. I said the S word.
Oh, ooh. Submission.
Why do we cringe, though, when we hear the word submission? Like, I think a lot of women cringe when they hear it. Some men do maybe too. I don't know. But what does God actually say about submission? We're going to talk about that next week. So join us for that conversation.
Thanks for joining us today for this family meeting. We are getting all geared up for Relationship Refresh, July 21st and 22nd of 2023. We would love to have you come and be a part of that weekend. Put it on your plans now, and have a great week, everybody. This meeting is adjourned. Okay.
That was a good talk on friendship, babe.
Yep.
Makes me want to call our friends.
And see what is up. And our friends are watching right now.
Hi. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Leave us some comments. Tell us about your safeguards that you have in line to protect your marriage relationship from friendships of the opposite sex. Tell us what you do.
And let us know. What do you think? Like, do you agree with what we're saying? Do you disagree? That's okay. We'd love to hear from your point of view as well. We're always trying to learn and grow from other people. We do believe iron sharpens iron. So you may have a different perspective that can really help us in our personal friendships and relationships. So feel free to share those things with us. And with that, you have a great week.